Hey guys, Memphis here. Just a friendly Canadian reminder to keep force spying, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube.
The semi-finals are upon us at IEM Katowice, the 14th CSGO major. All the quarter-finals, bizarrely, were 2-0s. They were all sweeps. We didn't have a single third map, even the ones that were good series, like the Team Liquid ENCE one to some degree. Never got to see a sniff at a third map, I'm afraid. But now we've got the semi-finals. Now we've got some pretty interesting matchups. On the one hand, we've got Na'Vi, who obviously was in the final of the last major, has been in the semis of the last two majors. They're facing off against ENCE, the underdog, who no one expected them to be going this far. They've already beaten one of the tournament favourites. There's one semi-final with a little bit of spice in it for you. The other semi-final is a classic from Counter-Strike. It's MiBR, who were able to overcome the rejuvenated Renegades and step up to a level we haven't seen from them in the tournament thus far, against the Imperious Astralis, who continue to roll through opponents. Still haven't truly looked tested, even though, yes, they've had a couple of maps that were close. Usually those tend to be the opponent's map or one that's in the middle of the pool, and they win anyway. So let's look at these two matchups. We'll start with the one with Na'Vi and ENCE. So interesting detail when Na'Vi played is the firepower wasn't really there for FaZe. FaZe didn't end up having much of a puncher's chance in the actual game. Nico himself played pretty poorly. That would have been one of your highest win conditions. He's been the most stable player for the FaZe guys over the last few months. He had a terrible series all in all. I think, quite frankly, it wasn't a very well vetoed series. Like, I don't know in what universe Zeus thought it was a good idea to pick Mirage, a map that actually FaZe has always been fairly comfortable on, gives them a bit of a puncher's chance. We've even seen some losses. I mean, the Na'Vi themselves even lost to Team Liquid on that map. I would have thought that all day and all night you'd be picking something like a train, an overpass. These seemed like the obvious things to pick against Na'Vi, but okay, FaZe Clan rather. But it didn't matter. They ended up winning 2-0 as it was. So coming into this, obviously not much has changed in the map pool. The one thing I will note is that Na'Vi did not need almost anything from Simple in that game. He had a couple of rounds where he got some highlight kills, but he actually had, I think the lowest frags for Na'Vi. He was incredibly pedestrian. One of the worst series I've actually seen Simple play. Normally, he even gets good numbers from most other players in his bad series or his quiet series. He actually was still, even though they won the series, they did this without Simple, which is obviously a very, very positive sign if you're a Na'Vi fan, because you hope it could happen again, right? This isn't like early 2018 when Simple could go absolutely off and they might lose the game, including on maps like Inferno and Mirage. So what happened was Electronics level went up massively from the groups phase, Swiss system, through to this quarterfinal. He was very good. Flamey's been pretty good the whole tournament long. So actually we're kind of waiting for Simple to arrive in the playoffs yet. Not a great sign for ENCE, because it's almost certain to happen. But okay, it gives them a little bit of room where they could believe maybe they could win this series, right? Over on the side of ENCE, they had actually quite a bizarre series against Liquid, because obviously, you look at the maps they were playing. They played Mirage and they played, what was it? Inferno, there we go. Now, both of those maps Team Liquid has always liked. Inferno with the old Team Liquid was an incredible map. And as a result, ENCE, yeah, they're pretty good on that map, but a lot of their wins weren't over top teams. You wouldn't have expected that one. The Mirage one was a bit more plausible. I still would pick Team Liquid to win that map, but fair enough. I guess the ENCE guys were on a 2-game winning streak. Yeah, they've beat some decent teams. They haven't beat many top 10 teams. They haven't played many top 10 teams. So, all in all, one of the biggest upsets we've ever seen. But fair play to them. They continued playing proper Counter-Strike. And crucially, the fragging was there for a way for ENCE that you could never have predicted. On the one hand, on Team Liquid, like Naf, for example, the best player on Team Liquid, in my opinion, had a terrible series. He was non-existent. Twists isn't as much of a factor. Now, they've swapped him around with Stewie for some of their spots. Stewie played all right, but didn't play an amazing series all in all, I'd say. The actual fragging power was on the ENCE side, and that was the least likely part, because Sergey, the best player a lot of people think on ENCE, was terrible in the Swiss system. He was a lot better in this series. Alu was godlike, especially on that second map. And X7, the guy you expect no stats whatsoever except really bad ones from, was really good in comparison to that context. So if their support player is out fragging the best player on Team Liquid, yeah, I'm afraid ENCE is going to win that series and Team Liquid is going to lose it. Like, as much as ENCE played very good, arguably the best I might have ever seen them play in a series, Team Liquid gave them massive favour as well. Like, Team Liquid could have turned up in Imperious form, and it might not have mattered that ENCE was in that form. Maybe we would have had a great 3-game series, who knows? But anyway, now these two teams are playing each other. Interestingly enough, the actual fragging difference overall evens out if you take into account the quarters and the Swiss. It's more that if you look on the side of Na'Vi, The question is, will Simple turn up? Most people would say yes, in which case they're going to have an edge star player-wise, but certainly an interesting matchup. So in terms of the series, this is an interesting thing because obviously it depends who goes first here, but the interesting detail is both teams permaban cash typically. Now the reason why I bring that up is because if you know anything, and by the way, ENCE really does permaban it. Like they've banned Inferno twice, only a couple of times in the last few months. I think some of those were best of ones. So whenever you're in this scenario, what should happen is the two teams should think to themselves, which of us really hates cash the most? And would the other team be willing to pick it to punish us? If the answer is they hate cash about as much as we do, and they wouldn't be willing to pick it to punish, then logically you should both float cash, and then one of you should ban it second rotation, so it's not the deciding map, and then no team has to play cash, but you don't waste your ban and feel like an idiot when you know the other team never wanted to play that map. But having observed Na'Vi in veto phases, first of all, I don't think Zeus is very good at veto phase. I see him consistently make what I would consider mistakes, including picking Inferno when he had a sub 50% win rate on it for many months last year. But more importantly, I've seen him in these spots before where he plays other teams that ban cash. I mean, Astralis was one, and they have always forced him to be the one that bans cash. So I think no matter what order it goes in, that Na'Vi is just going to ban cash anyway, and that it's going to be the ENCE guys who get to ban something else and get a free ban. Now, I say that despite the fact, obviously, Na'Vi did play cash more than ENCE did recently when they played at Blast Pro Series Lisbon in the final. But that's because they chose to ban Nuke against Astralis. So in a world in which it's offered, I think they're just going to ban cash even though the opponent doesn't play it. So I think ENCE, who has the choice, hopefully doesn't ban cash and give up a free ban. Otherwise, I'll flame the fuck out of them on Twitter because that's so dumb. I think personally that ENCE will choose to ban Inferno. I actually think it's a map that... let me think. Actually, wait a minute. The reason why I think they'll ban Inferno is because even though they have a decent win record on it, obviously they just beat Team Liquid on it, right? Won 4 of the last 5 on it. The problem is, historically, the ENCE guys not only have banned it before in series, they've banned it second rotation more than any other map in the pool, suggesting they do not want to play it as a third map. If you don't want to play it as a decider, I'm not going to go ahead and buy that you're willing to pick it as a punish pick. And I think you definitely don't want the opponent picking it. So I think logically, they're probably going to ban Inferno and take the free ban there. So if we've got an Inferno and cash out of the pool, I think personally that ENCE has 2 obvious choices here. Either pick Train, which is an incredible map for ENCE. They are 10 out of their last 10 games on it in the last 3 months. Really big time numbers. Extend it beyond that, they've won 12 in a row. I have actually seen though in the past that they've banned Train a couple of times second rotation, which implies that depending on the opponent, they are willing to ban it. Just like sometimes they don't pick it against opponents. It's not like Nuke for Astralis where people think, oh, they should just pick it every time, which by the way, Astralis doesn't do, but people will think they do. So if there's a world in which maybe they don't pick it because we know Na'Vi is strong on Train, but Na'Vi hasn't played Train that much over the last few months. I think there's a world in which if you're ENCE, you think this is a very strong map for us. If it's available, someone isn't banning Train against us, fuck it, just pick it. Like obviously that was going to be the problem against Liquid, but we can go ahead and pick it now. It's either you pick Train or you pick that Dust 2 they're always very confident in, which obviously, yes, you can play against Na'Vi. You might be able to beat Na'Vi on it. I mean, a lot of teams have tried, I'll say it. It works for some, it doesn't work with others. It's risky. I think Dust 2 is always a risk to pick as your pick, quite frankly. So I would go with Train. I think that's a much more consistent map. I think ENCE will pick Train. And you know what? This is a tough one because I think actually Na'Vi has the skill set and the track record of being very good on Train because they don't play it all the time. I'm actually not sure if they're better than ENCE on the map. Like, I think they could win the map. They have the star players to do it. But I think in terms of fundamentals, ENCE is a better trained team. And if you look at their current form, I'm going to edge ENCE on this. Like, I certainly think Na'Vi could win. I think Navi's a better team than ENCE. But I'll say that ENCE can win if they pick Train here. If it's Dust 2, I'm a lot more 50-50 on that one. I don't really know. I'd probably, if I had to bet, pick ENCE. But there's absolutely a world in which Na'Vi can win that one as well. I think Na'Vi, based on what they did against FaZe Clan, based on what they've done recently, I actually think they will pick Mirage. I know it's a map that the guys from ENCE like, but a detail to know here is the top 3 maps for both teams really are Train, Mirage, Overpass in one of those orders. So as a result, I think both teams are actually going to let all those maps come through in the veto, and we're just going to have a great series, and whoever's the better on 2 out of the 3 maps is the one who's going to be the winner. I don't think you'll see a lot of weird punishes, crazy vetoes. So I actually think here that Na'Vi just picks Mirage, and I will favour Na'Vi to win that one. I could see Na'Vi winning 2-0, but if it's Train, I'll edge ENCE and say they can get that map. I think Na'Vi picks Mirage and they're the better team overall on Mirage. I haven't seen enough victories from ENCE against top teams on that map. Then I think ENCE bans Nuke. I think Na'Vi has a choice between Dust 2 and Overpass. They ban Dust 2. They let Overpass, a fabulous map for them, but also a map that ENCE players come through. And Na'Vi's the better team. I think Na'Vi wins Overpass. I think Na'Vi wins this series 2-1. In terms of intangibles, obviously the ENCE guys are very inexperienced. Obviously, you wouldn't expect people like X7 to have the standout performance they did when they were playing against Team Liquid. You'd expect them to drop off. You'd expect Simple to come back up again and be one of the best players in the world. You'd expect that the guys from Na'Vi are locked in and actually aren't going to take this lightly because it's the semi-final of the major. You want to get to the final. I think a lot of the intangibles lie on the side of Na'Vi, and I think generally the analytics say that Na'Vi wins this series, and probably the star players from ENCE can't frag at the level that we know Electronic and Simple can, and Electronic's awake and Simple surely is going to be for the semi-finals. So then we've got the other semi-final, MiBR against Astralis. Obviously, people might have thought this could be Renegades. Renegades was looking so great coming in. But as I said in that video, all the intangibles were on MiBR's side. More experience, Renegades barely experienced in playoffs. All the success from the past, know how to win under pressure, big stage players, all on MiBR's side. Renegades got none of that stuff. In terms of overall star players, you look at Coldzera, Fur, Fallen. Obviously, the bigger names are easy on MiBR side. But all the analytics on paper said Renegades was going to win that series. They had the better map pool. They had a better veto. They had better performing players overall. They had actually a decent level of fragging. They'd looked so polished throughout the tournament. I've got to say, that Renegades didn't really show up to this series. They did in the second map. They had a really good point of that. But you look at the first map, I don't know what on earth they were thinking picking Dust 2. I think they absolutely fucked their whole quarterfinal up in the veto phase. One of the best vetoing teams in the world didn't veto like that in that semi-final. The idea they picked Dust 2 is bonkers to me, because in doing so, you give up every advantage you had. You're the better team in terms of tactical fundamentals. Well, you don't have any of those on Dust 2. You barely play it. You can scout an opponent's demos and figure out what he's doing and figure your anti-strats. Can't do that against MiBR. I haven't seen him playing Dust 2 much with this particular lineup. All these factors you took off the table, the comfort of playing a Mirage or an Inferno, all gone. Playing Cash, a map that the opponent doesn't really like, punishing them in that sense. Can't do that either. I don't know what on earth they were thinking. Quite frankly, that map alone, they deserved to lose that series. I know they almost won Train, and as a result, they almost got to a third map, which would have been really crazy on Mirage, but they didn't, and quite frankly, I'm a bit disgusted in the way Renegades played. On the MiBR side, great performance. Wasn't the best series you can imagine, but a great series for MiBR. Fur was absolutely fucking banging when he was on that Dust 2 game. When they got to Train, Taco showed his value as a player. Anyone who thinks Team Liquid's going to be better without him, that is very debatable yet. They were a very good team with Taco, and he knew his job. And he did a great job, I thought, on that map. I thought Fallen was able to come alive with his AWPing. Fallen's level was way higher than it was in Swiss system. Fur's level was much, much higher. This was more like 2017 Fur when they had the old lineup, where it was a monster. So I think you add in those factors, that's also what hurt you, is that it was going to be so hard to have strong CT sides with Fur playing that way. So fair enough to Renegades, they gave it a shot, but MiBR were the veterans, they did prevail. Now, can MiBR beat Astralis? Because Astralis, obviously, okay, yes, the Dust 2 game against NiP is starting to get a bit ropey towards the end. They showed some weakness, which could be key for this series, but they still wrapped it up. They still won in the end. The Mirage game was fucking humiliating. Like, they just styled on those motherfuckers on NiP's pick. I told you NiP would pick that particular map. I even thought it was a fair pick. NiP just didn't show up individually whatsoever in that series. Forrest was quite poor. Get Right was quite poor. Really, only Rez, I thought, played really well. I think he actually had some very good rounds. I felt bad for him that he was kind of stuck on a team that didn't perform in the quarters, when obviously he would have hoped this would be a chance to go to semis. Didn't happen for him. In terms of Astralis, obviously everyone was good when they win like that, but I would say Magisk and Xyp9x were particularly godlike. Like, that performance from Xyp9x, statistically, you do not expect anything like that from him. So when he's going to do that, I mean, they're such a consistent team anyway, it's going to be fucking hard to beat them. Like, Device didn't even have to be the best player. He just kind of cruised, and he still was getting his, and they still were doing very well. And obviously, he was one of the keys to Dust 2, which he has been actually most times you see Astralis play that map because of his mobile nature with the AWP. So I think the interesting thing for me is the pick ban on this one could go really crazy, because on the one hand, MiBR almost certainly will ban Nuke. They don't like the map. They never played the map traditionally. And obviously Astralis are gods on it, have won 29 in a row. So the question here is, does Astralis ban Cash, which is their normal ban? Because technically they shouldn't. MiBR has shown no suggestion whatsoever that they are willing to play Cash. In fact, the MiBR guys have Cash as their map that they ban second rotation more than any other map. So they normally want it out of there. I think Renegades should have picked Cash against these guys, actually. So the question is, will Astralis ban Cash? I personally think they should float it. I think they should instead go themselves for a Dust 2, if they really believe they're that good, as a ban. because they showed some weakness against NIP, and we know MiBR will look strong in it. And Cold Zero said in the interview after that game that they had planned to pick Dust 2 themselves. So if you heard that in your Astralis, either that's gamesmanship, in which case fair play, or it's true, in which case I would say either ban Dust 2 or ban Train. Those are the obvious maps that MiBR can potentially pick as perceived punishes against you. So I think if Astralis ban Cash, which I actually think they might just do, which I hope they don't personally, I think MiBR is going to pick Dust 2. Now, there were some problems for Astralis on that one. The thing is, I haven't seen enough of MiBR. Like, I think Astralis is still a very good Dust 2 team. They're not the best in the world, but they're a very good team. They haven't lost on it many times. I think generally, a lot of their fundamentals work on that map. I think it's not like the MiBR guys have played Dust 2 a ton with this lineup. I wouldn't mind MiBR picking it into me. So I wouldn't also mind banning it, because I know they won't pick Cash. But if you're going to let it up, let them pick it. I actually think Astralis can edge Dust 2. I think that actually, even if that's picked, that they will win it. I certainly think Fair MiBR, it's not a bad shout right now. Astralis, I think it's obvious. I think you pick Inferno. After Nuke, it's your best map. I could even argue it's better than your Nuke, actually, if you look at the quality of opponents and how often they've played it in big matches on Inferno. I think Astralis wins this map, quite frankly, because MiBR looked shaky. Obviously, they had the terrible game against Cloud9. They still haven't figured out their spots on that map. You still have some issues, as you see when you bring back Taco and Phelps, the players that went to shit in the last 6 to 8 months of their time on their SK lineup on this map. Still got some problems. You still got Cold Zero, who's going to be one of the best Inferno players of all time till he retires, pretty much, it seems. The guy's unbelievable. But I don't necessarily know that that will work for you. So I think Astralis will win that. I think Astralis probably 2-0 this series, quite frankly, unless they do something clever. Or rather, let me think, what could happen here? How could they possibly lose a map? I think the only way I could see them losing a map like outright is if MiBR secretly has been practicing Overpass and then they pick it and they're somehow able to go ham on it. Or maybe on Train they could edge. Actually, yeah, maybe on Train they could edge Astralis. I think that would be a pretty good game. I just think based on what we've seen, they're probably going to pick Dust 2. I think with what's left over, MiBR bans Overpass. I think Astralis has a choice of Train or Mirage. I think they ban Train. Mirage comes up. Both teams traditionally like the map. Astralis, they have lost on it a lot, but they're also still pretty good in terms of winning. I think they're like 6 out of their last 8 on it or something. So I think Astralis wins the decider, even if it goes there. I think Astralis wins. I think we're getting a Na'Vi versus Astralis final. It's a repeat of the last major, but hopefully if Flamey shows up, it won't be the same score as the last major, but I think you are going to see that particular matchup. I don't think there's really any intangibles go to MiBR's favour here. I think if you're Astralis, this is a revenge tour for you. You remember losing to the MiBR guys many, many years ago, just like with NIP. Now's your chance to really punish them, continue your own dominance, go to the major final. I'll also add that over this major and the previous major, Astralis is yet to lose a map in the playoffs. They are 10-0 in the playoff series over this major and the last one. So I'm interested to see if that's even going to happen. I actually think they could 2-0 this and go to the final. So maybe they're not even going to lose a map at this particular tournament. This video and all of the content on my channel is kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, James Harding, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to take part in an esports discussion with yours truly? Would you like teasers for some of my upcoming content? See who the guests are going to be? Do you want to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA? Perhaps you'd like to suggest a guest you'd like to see in my content or a topic to discuss. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.